them too.
I'm in a bog, not a toilet, but a peat bog. The peat bogs are really good stores of carbon. Peat bogs around the world take up about 3% of the world's surface. And peat bogs are areas where water sits on the surface. Now, the reason we've got water sitting on the surface here, you can see here's some water that's sitting on the surface, is when it rains, water soaks into the soil, so it infiltrates down, but then it can't get through the rocks. So where I am here, this water is impermeable, so water can't percolate downwards into the rocks, so the water sits on the surface. In terms of how much water we've got here, peat bogs can be 90% water. So you can see that there's lots of water sitting on the surface. And what that water does is it means that there's no bacteria to break down the organic matter. So this material here is dead plant material, and it just doesn't break down, and it just sits in the ground. These peat bogs can be incredibly thick, and because you've got this organic matter that hasn't broken down, this organic matter stores carbon. It stores so much carbon that it stores more than the world's rainforests. So peat bogs, even though they only take up, there's like a sixth of the area of all the world's forests are peat bogs, but peat bogs store 4 times more carbon than all the world's forests. So these are really important landscapes for storing carbon, like excellent carbon sinks and stores. Another feature is, because you've got this organic matter that isn't breaking down, peat bogs are very acidic, and so the water that comes off them here is very acidic water, and it creates quite an unusual environment. It's very boggy and very acidic, so you get quite unusual species that can cope with that. The most common one is sphagnum moss. So if I just find you some sphagnum moss, here we go. And this plant here is this is sphagnum. This can cope with being dried out, and it also absorbs loads and loads of water, and it can cope with these acidic conditions. And it's very sort of low in nutrients, but it's a classic sort of plant that lives in these bogs. So we have lots of bogs in this country, but they are perhaps the greatest carbon store that we have in the country. This is another great plant in a bog. It's called a sundew, and this is a carnivorous plant. And this plant has slightly sticky bits on its leaves, and what it does, I don't know if you can see that one there, it's just caught a fly. These sticky bits attract flies in, and then they get their nutrients from flies. And the reason this plant is adapted this way is because these soils are so nutrient poor. There's a couple of flies in there. They're so nutrient poor that they have to get the nutrients from animals. So these plants actually eat animals, and this is a sundew, that is a plant that is found up in a bog environment.